My story. So I was in this room, this very room, many times, listening to similar talks and lectures, and always wondering, this all sounds good, but how do, you must have had like a dad start your company and hand it to you. Like, how did this actually work out? I was always curious about being an entrepreneur, but I never thought that I was one. I didn't know, because I didn't know how that actually happened. So I was in the accounting program here. I did it because it was the quickest way through school. I grew up my entire life wanting to be a heart surgeon, and then about halfway through my mission, I read a book by Joe Christensen. I was like, I don't know if I want to be a doctor, and I read a book, and he said, work your butt off on your mission, and you'll figure out what you need to do on the plane ride home. And I totally bought into that. You'll find I'm a person, when I hear something that I believe, I'm like, done, let's move on, let's do that. So on the plane ride home, somewhere between Chicago and Salt Lake, I was like, I need to go to BYU and major in business. I had no idea what majoring in business meant. So showed up here and said, all right, I know I need a business degree. What's the quickest way in and out? And they told me about the Master of Accounting program. So I went through the program. They churn out great public accountants. How many people are in the accounting program here? We just got two representing. I had signed a job offer to go work for KPMG in Salt Lake City. And that was I was hesitant about it. It didn't seem like me, but it's what everybody else was doing. And so I was like, I guess this is what I'll go do, and whatever. And then my second to last semester, I took a class from Larry H. Miller. So those of you who aren't from Utah, Larry owned the Utah Jazz and 38 or so car dealerships. And he had this class he taught here. In just the spring, and he would come on Tuesdays and Thursdays for 3 hours each time for the entire spring semester and just tell stories. It was the coolest class ever. And about halfway through the semester, he just talked about how he became an entrepreneur and building his empire and buying the Jazz. It was just all cool stuff. I'm a huge jazz nut, so I loved he'd tell stories about fights he would get in with Karl Malone in the locker room. It was just cool. But about halfway through, he talked about how he became an entrepreneur and that it happened at the age of 38. And, he bought his first dealership, and, he'd saved up, this is like 1978 or something. He'd saved up 95 grand, which in today's dollars would probably be like a third of $1,000,000. He'd been able to save up that money by being cheap. And it allowed him to buy his first dealership and kind of launched him into being an entrepreneur. But when he got done telling us the story, he said, but I want you all to know that is extremely rare. You do not find many entrepreneurs that got started at the age of 38, because by then you've got 4 kids and braces and tuition you're paying for. It's hard to leave a job because in most cases you have to go without salary when you start a business. It's just too hard to do that when you're 38. So he told us, he's like, if I were you, I'd go do it right now. Do it right out of school. You're already used to eating ramen noodles. And if it doesn't work, you can go get a job. And again, I bought into that 100%. I was like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. So a little later on that semester, I was in a lecture series like this, and you guys all know what Sarbanes-Oxley is. This was like 2002, 2003, the big blow up in the economy over Enron and WorldCom. And there was a guy who had started Accenture, which is now a multi-billion-dollar consulting firm, and he was a BYU guy. And he was talking about Sarbanes-Oxley, and he said, anytime a law of this magnitude is passed, a lot of entrepreneurs get rich off of it. And that was, his Accenture was the first Sarbanes-Oxley compliance-focused consulting firm that started. And it was started by actually a bunch of BYU guys, and they all made a ton of money. Sold it within a couple of years and made a ton of money. So he was like, if I were you, I would be reading through that law and figuring out a way to start a business off of it. So again, totally bought into that. So my first company I started at my last semester was called Silent Whistle. It was a Sarbanes-Oxley little compliance product. Wrote the business plan in the MBA lounge just down the hallway here. Did the business plan competitions, a lot of the new venture challenges, what it's currently called. It's gotten a lot better. When I was there, it was like, here's the requirements, good luck to you, and you pretty much were on your own.